This truck looks sexy with a load behind it. Oh my. That is awesome. Look at that. She looks good. She looks good. What is going on today, guys? My name is Alex. Welcome back to the channel. Today we have something special lined up for you guys. We got a skid steer here. It's got to go back to town for some repairs. This thing weighs about 5,000 pounds, and we got about a 2,500 pound trailer that's gonna tow it. So it should be a bit of an adventure tomorrow. I'm excited. This Power Wagon here has the 6.4 HEMI in it. It's got the 8-speed, as well as 410 gears, which are great for off-road, but also great for towing. Now, if you just have the standard 2,500 RAM with the 6.4 HEMI, and 410 gears with the 8-speed transmission, your max towing capacity is 17,000 pounds. So I feel like there's going to be plenty of power coming out of this truck. I think it's going to be the suspension that sags a lot, and that's what really limits the towing capacity. But in terms of power, I think this thing is going to rock that 8,000 pounds or 8,000 plus pounds down the highway. This thing didn't squat as much as I thought it would. I'll show you there. I measured it. If I remember correctly, it was 44 to the fender well. So if I'm correct, we are at 41 and a half. And then let's do the other side too. Okay, so we're at 40, just under 42. So yeah, I'd call that about 2.5 inches of squat from this 8,000 pound load, give or take. We are towing this thing obviously out of the bush here. We're about half an hour into the bush, then we're gonna hit the highway, and I'm gonna give you guys my opinion on how this 2022 Ram 2500 Power Wagon tows. They say it's not a good tower. We're gonna have to put that to the test, and that's what we're doing today. So I'm excited. Stick around. Should be a fun little adventure. How could I forget this? Oh yes. Oh, now we're towing. They say that's an extra 100 horsepower right there. Oh, and the driver's side one's an extra 100 foot-pounds of torque. So we got extra power now. We got a moose up here in Northern Ontario. Alright guys, so we're gonna keep this thing in 4-wheel drive lock until we get onto the main road. She's pretty snowy and slick. Just don't want to spin this thing around too much. Yeah, I definitely need to be in 4-wheel drive on this road. Some of these corners, when they go up the bend, like all 4 wheels in this truck are spinning up it. So this is kind of cool. Like, the Power Wagon obviously is an awesome 4-wheel drive off-road pickup truck, but on a road like this where it's kind of sketchy, full of snow, you can still tow good weight with it, and know that you're gonna get out of the bush because you got a freaking awesome 4-wheel drive system. And worst case scenario, if you get stuck on a hill, you can lock up both diffs, put her in 4 low, and with the crawl ratio on this truck, it's absolutely phenomenal. And hopefully that'll pull you up the hill. Absolute worst case scenario, you got the winch in the front. And so this is why I love the Power Wagon. So we made her out of the bush. We're on a main road now. It's a little bit better plowed, not by much though. And then we got another 20K of this, and then we'll be on the number 11 going down south down to Old Toronto. And we should be in Toronto in like 4 hours, something like that. But no, I'm excited to see how this thing pulls on the highway. Obviously, we got to be a little bit cautious on these roads here. They're plowed, but still just snow covered, and I don't want this trailer pushing me around too much. As you can see, like, they're super curvy, and we're kind of in the middle of nowhere. We're finally on some pavement here, so we'll take her out of 4-wheel drive, put her in 2-wheel drive now, and yeah, now we get to actually see how this thing tows now that we're out of 4-wheel drive here. I'll give you guys the fuel mileage, my take on how it tows. I towed a lot of kilometers with my Ram 1500 with the 5.7 Hemi, so I got a good idea how that thing tows. And I'm excited to see how this Ram 2500 with the 6.4 Hemi tows some weight behind her. So I'm excited. All right, we got a little hill here. Let's see if we can really break this engine in. Oh yeah! The Hemi. Full power, baby. Cummins got nothing on this. Made it to the highway. Now we're gonna give this thing a good little pull and see how fast we can get her up to. Oh yeah. Just cruising at 5,000 RPM. Nice. Gotta love Northern Ontario. Always down for a good winter storm, even when you don't want it. There wasn't supposed to snow today, and yeah, it looks like we got some snow in the forecast. All right. Alright, we are through the snowstorm. Looks like it's going to be clear sailing from now on. But let's talk about the truck and how it's doing. So, like I mentioned earlier, I have quite a bit of experience towing with a Ram 15. I towed a trailer out to BC on the Pacific Ocean, and then I towed a 52 or 5,500 pound trailer back across the country. It was like a 5-day adventure. So I know quite a bit about that truck when it comes to towing. Now, how does this Ram 2500 Power Wagon compare to that? Well, I have to say, so behind me we have like 8,000 plus pounds, 8,200 pounds, and it kind of feels much easier. And that's what this truck is supposed to do. It's 2500, it's supposed to be a much beefier truck for towing payload. Obviously this is the Power Wagon, so it's really not, but regardless, you know, the gearing, the drive line, it's much stronger, beefier, and obviously the 6.4 is a bigger engine, and it shows. It's towing this with ease. My fuel economy right now is 25 liters per 100 kilometers. When I was towing that 52 or 5,300 pound trailer across the country, I was averaging like 25 liters per 100K on the 1500. So we got 3,000 pounds more behind us. You could argue that I was towing a enclosed trailer, so the aerodynamics are a little bit crappier. But regardless, I thought this thing was gonna drink fuel. I thought it was gonna be like 30, 32 liters per 100K. 25 liters per 100 kilometers when towing 8,200 pounds. Not the worst thing in the world. Definitely not the worst thing in the world. So right now we're going into a headwind. We've pretty much been at 3,000 RPM for the last like 15 minutes. But my oil and transmission temperature there and there are staying nice and steady, which is nice. I know my Ram 1500, if the RPMs were staying high for too long, the oil temp and the transmission temp would start to climb pretty significantly. You know, I gotta keep an eye on the oil temperature. I don't know if you guys can see my gauges, but the tranny and the oil temp are getting a little bit toasty. And we'll see if those keep climbing up. But however, I know this truck, it has extra cooling. Even the engine's actually cooled better. The transmission has a bigger transmission cooler in it. So it's just, the 2500 platform is just so much better for towing. But no, overall it's been pretty impressive actually. I thought this thing would struggle a little bit. The biggest thing I thought would happen is the squat. I thought this truck would squat like 4.5 inches with that soft suspension, and it really didn't. It only squatted like 2.5 inches or something, which is pretty impressive. And I feel like most guys are going to be using this truck to tow their ATVs, their snowmobiles, you know, their toys, not necessarily buying this truck to tow horse trailers. So, you know, you can easily tow your ATVs, your quads, your sleds with this Power Wagon. And the absolute beauty of this truck is you can pull that trailer into just about anywhere. I lied, the storm's back. It is gonna be a gnarly drive home. We got about an hour and a half left here, and it's gonna be snowy, sun setting, it's gonna get dark. Nasty, nasty, nasty. Guys, it's getting dark, the roads are getting crappy. I am going to catch up with you guys in a second here. I'm gonna drop this trailer off, and then tomorrow I'll give you the conclusion on what I think about this truck in terms of its towing capacity and how it did. So let's jump to that right now. So let's talk about my thoughts on how this Power Wagon did, towing a pretty decent load. Now, before I even bought the truck, I heard from a couple buddies that the Power Wagons were not good at towing and their payloads sucked. So we towed 8,200 pounds, and the max towing capacity on this 2022 Ram Power Wagon is right around 10,600 pounds. So that's about 80% of this max towing capacity, and it towed it with ease. Now, in comparison to my Ram 1500, I towed about 5,200 pounds, about 5,000 kilometers across the country, and its max towing capacity was 8,000 pounds. So that accounts for about 65% of that 1500's max towing capacity. And despite only being 65% of its max towing capacity, it felt very heavy. And I don't know if I would feel comfortable getting even close to 8,000 pounds with that 1500. It just didn't handle the load that well. It did it fine, but you could tell the truck was under load, and it just really didn't like towing a load even that heavy. And before I go down this path, I had nothing against my Ram 1500. I absolutely love the truck. It is exactly what I needed at the time. However, being honest, it just didn't like having a load behind it. That's just my opinion. That's what I felt. And, you know, for example, the thing squatted like 4 inches with that weight, 5,200 pounds. It had about 600 pounds of tongue weight on there. You know, so there wasn't like there was this extreme payload. In fact, that 1500 had 30 more pounds of payload than this Power Wagon, yet the Power Wagon only sank like 2.5 inches with 8,200 pounds. Now, I didn't measure the actual tongue weight on this load, but that skid steer was further forward because I really wanted to make sure there was weight on the back ends. Now, granted, obviously I was towing over the mountains. I was at altitude with that Ram 1500, but even on flat ground, that trailer just pushed that truck. Every bump you'd feel the sway of the back end. It just didn't feel that comfortable towing loads. Again, not saying that a Ram 1500 can't do it. I love my truck. It definitely can do it because I did it, but it just wasn't the most comfortable situation. That's all I'm saying. Now, the reason why I'm comparing this 2500 Power Wagon lot to the 1500 Ram is because those same buddies who warned me about the Power Wagon's towing capacity said, why don't you just go buy a Ram Rebel? It's got 2 locking discs, it'll be great off-road, and the towing capacity will be relatively the same. And I thought about it, but I knew I really wanted the Power Wagon, so obviously pull the trigger on the Power Wagon. But now that I've towed with it, it is night and day to a 1500. It's just so much more solid and sturdy, and it should. It's on the 2500 platform. You know, guys, the axles are way bigger. The differentials are bigger. The driveline is beefier. The frame is stiffer. Obviously, the suspension is not necessarily stiffer. We know that, but everything else about this truck, the transmission cooler is bigger, the engine has better cooling. And you know, that's the other thing I pointed out in the video with my 1500. When it got under load and higher RPMs for a good chunk of time, that oil and transmission temp would start to rise pretty dramatically, to a point where I'd actually have to back off my speed because I was worried about overheating those things. Where this truck, when we were in that headwind, transmission and oil temp stayed sturdy the whole time I towed this all day. So I guess what I'm getting at is that even though the towing capacity is only 10,600 pounds on this Power Wagon, I would feel much more comfortable towing right at that max payload versus, let's say, a 1500 with 10,600 pounds, because this truck is just so much more sturdy. And as I mentioned earlier again in the video, you know, this exact drive line in a normal, quote unquote normal 2500 can tow 17,000 pounds. So I'm pretty confident there's tons of power here. And so when you're just looking at the raw numbers of towing capacity and payload, let's say, versus a 1500, you kind of have to take more into consideration. And I think when I towed that 8,200 pounds, it really shined a light on why a 2500 truck is just so much more reliable and comfortable towing. So all in all, I'm actually quite impressed with this Power Wagon and its towing ability. Obviously, we are not going to compare it to a 2500 with a Cummins or even just a standard 2500 because we know that answer. It's obviously just not as capable of towing, but that's not what it's meant for. So can you really fault it? Not really. If you buy this thing to tow a horse trailer, you just don't know what you're doing, because that's not what it's meant. And then lastly, my final fuel mileage, I'll put on the screen there, 24 liters per 100 kilometers. Not the worst, not the best. It's better than I thought. So guys, that is gonna wrap up the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I think next we're gonna have to actually max out this towing capacity, and maybe we'll even get a 1500 to do a little comparison there. I think that'd be fun. But this thing is more than capable than towing your toys, your sleds, your ATVs, whatever you need to, and it'll tow it just about anywhere you want it to go. But as always, if you like the video, don't forget to leave that thumbs up, and if you like cool stuff like this, don't forget to subscribe. We'd love to have you on board. We got a bunch of cool stuff planned. That's enough of me. We'll see you in the next freaking video, guys.